Thank you, Tammy Sue Baker, and welcome everybody to our show today. We're back with day number 2.
We are.
With Derek and Sharon Gilbert, who are on Skywatch TV. They are on our network with the Prophets Network, and they have their shows there, and they have shows on Skywatch.
Skywatch TV, yeah. They feel like family.
Yeah.
And we feel like one. And Dr. Tom Horn, we love you, has stood with you and our family in the ministry.
That's right.
What a friend to have on Tom Horn and his family, just believing in you, Dad. When you went through your whole situation early last year, they were one of the first ones that jumped in and said, what can we do to help you? What can we do to help the ministry, the family? And I need to remind you, Tom Horn is part of our board of directors, which is unbelievable to have a man of that kind of, what a heart. He just has a kind heart and a pastor's heart.
We have a great board of directors. And it's time for us to all stand together because there's coming a day, and it's now.
Yeah.
It sure is.
They've shut down the president's voice this last month or so, and now they're trying to shut down all the Christian voices. They want to cancel the Bible, basically, calling it hate speech. And it's time for the church to stand together.
Amen. Amen.
Or fall apart.
Yeah, that's right.
We got to do it. We got to do it. So, Derek and Sharon, glad to have you back with us today.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank
it's an
you
honor
very
to be
much.
here.
We love being with you guys.
We talked about the Great Reset yesterday, got started on it. But what is the Biden administration's part, and what is their attitude towards this Great Reset? Do you know? Have you studied that at all?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, they really telegraphed this with the slogan that they adopted around June of 2020 for the Biden campaign, which was "Build Back Better." And that is a phrase that really comes from, well, two places: the World Economic Forum, which is the prime promoter of this Great Reset, but also the United Nations, which is also on board with this. Essentially, Build Back Better has become the rallying cry for this whole process of wanting to fundamentally transform life on planet Earth.
But the phrase "build back" implies that the building is gone.
That something is broken.
In other words, it's order out of chaos.
It's also about the destruction of historical monuments, the cancel culture of erasing figures from history with whom they disagree. I mean, let's forget about the historical context of the 18th century, where it was a different world. And the men and women who lived then, like today, were imperfect, but they lived in a culture that is different from what we see today, just as the prophets and the apostles lived in a different world. To understand where we are today, we have to know where we came from. And this idea, this cancel culture, is not just about shutting down voices trying to speak today. It's about erasing our history so that we are always living in the now. It's like watching a soap opera when an actor leaves to take a different job, and without missing a beat, there'll be a smooth-voiced announcer who'll come in and you see this unfamiliar person walk onto the set. The role of so-and-so is now being played by so-and-so. And you're supposed to forget that anything happened prior to that moment. And that's kind of how we are.
It's like Bobby Ewing stepping out of the shower.
Yes, forget the entire last season. That was all just a dream. But that's kind of how we are as people. We tend to live, what's happening to us right now is the most important thing ever. And so we have to study history to understand better where we're going in the future. If you don't know your past, well, it's like George Santayana, the philosopher, wrote, those who fail to learn the lessons of history are doomed to repeat them. And this movement, the Great Reset, and this cancel culture that is growing out of it, this idea that we need to erase all of our history that we find unpleasant and unacceptable by today's standard, which will change again tomorrow, is about eliminating any frame of reference so that our kids, our grandkids, will have no clue about why America was created, and they can be then indoctrinated to believe that America is fundamentally, systemically racist and evil. It needs to be destroyed so we can build back better.
Wow.
The Great Reset is totally opposite of the gospel of Jesus Christ.
It really is.
The reset is that cancel culture, Mondo.
Yes.
You know, and it's just like if you made a mistake, which you did in your lifetime, I did. I've sinned. Everybody has. The Bible says if you
That's
don't,
right.
if you won't admit you have sinned, then you're in trouble.
Yeah.
But we've all sinned.
Yes, we
Yes,
have.
we have.
But when we say, God, forgive me of my sins, he doesn't say, I cancel you.
That's right.
You know, bam, 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 you're out. No, he says, I will save you if you'll confess me with your mouth.
Right.
Amen.
I will forgive you of all your sins. I will cleanse you from all unrighteousness.
Yes.
And all you have to do is come to me. Believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God.
Right.
And you
Amen.
confess him before others. And you're saved. You're born again. And you have a new life.
Yeah.
He doesn't take your job from you because you sinned.
Right.
He doesn't take anything from you. One of the great preachers, I guess, of our time, cancel cultured me. He just said, Jim sinned. We caught Jim a sin he did 20 years ago. We know he did something, and it was under the blood. Yes, I had sinned. But they said, I can't preach anymore. I can't be used of God anymore.
Right.
And they said, we're going to take your ministry. They did. They put me in prison and took my ministry from me.
That's, I can't believe you're saying that.
$1
because
billion
that's-
ministry.
I want to tell you something. They did what they're doing right now. They have erased you from history. And cancel culture right now is trying to erase the church history
right.
from the foundation of our forefathers. There's a
That's right,
word
from the history of America.
There's a word that you have used since I have met you, and you've listened to this word, acceleration. Watch when things accelerate. The Great Reset started by a man named Schwab. Listen to this because it's so powerful, connected to what you're saying right now. It's happened suddenly and rapidly. The acceleration of the book of Revelation is happening right before our eyes, and the church is asleep. Schwab says in his book clearly that coronavirus is not as much as a crisis as it is an opportunity to be exploited, a chance to accelerate the birth of the New World Order he calls the Fourth Industrial Revolution, where religion, Christianity, does not exist. And the fact that they erased you 20, 30 years ago from the foundation of the future, when young people right now need to understand the history of Christian television, your name should pop up. Your history should pop up. The great revival that took place with PTA and Heritage USA should pop up. Well, cancel culture has erased you from that history. And what they did was the beginning. It almost seems like God has always showed you the future of the church.
But I'm concerned about what's going on in this cancel culture and what they do to people and you'd think that liberals would want to be renewed. Famous people would want to be renewed, but they're being canceled. They're being destroyed. And so it's very, very important. I want to ask you about our allies. What do they feel about this cancel culture?
Well, we want to make clear that this is not just something that's coming from the United States with the and the World Economic Forum. And by the way, Mondo, we showed that clip in yesterday's program of Klaus Schwab speaking. Doesn't he look like he came from Central Casting for James Bond villains?
He just needs a cat.
I mean, yeah. Blonde guy, German accent, speaking about taking over the world. It's really, really creepy. But our allies, our closest allies, Canada and the United Kingdom, both have also signaled that they are on board with this program. Back in November, the premier of Canada, Justin Trudeau, delivered a speech for the World Economic Forum where he talked about this opportunity to reset and build back better. And when conservatives in Canada pointed this out and said, hey, wait a minute, he's talking about the World Economic Forum's Great Reset, the mainstream legacy media in Canada mocked those conservatives there in our northern neighbor. Conspiracy theory. Oh, this is just a joke. It's laughable. Just A couple of weekends ago, Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, used the phrase "build back better" on something that he tweeted out. So again, just sort of a little signal there is like, yeah, we're kind of on board with this, because at that level, they know what these phrases mean and how they're being used. The Biden campaign in the middle of summer last year adopted that as its campaign slogan. Again, this is signaling that they are on board with this globalist drive to dismantle the middle class in the West, where we in the middle class here in America, in Canada, the United Kingdom, in Western Europe, we enjoy a level of prosperity that kings in the Middle Ages would have dreamed of.
Oh, yes.
We have more creature comforts today than royalty did 500, 600 years ago. And yet they want to take us back down to the lowest common denominator, make us all equal, equal outcome. Equitable outcome is what they keep talking with this idea of stakeholder capitalism. Equitable outcome. What that means.
You'll be so happy.
Yeah, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. Essentially, they're going to bring us all down to the same level of poverty. It's about those at the top of the pyramid, and I use that word deliberately, maintain their wealth because they will own all of these things that we won't own. They'll be the ones telling us what we can have, how much energy we can use, whether we can travel, what information we can consume.
And they can change the rules at any time.
And if we don't understand our history and the principles on which our civilization is founded, which are biblical, then they are free to just manipulate this lump of civilization like it's clay and to twist it into the shape that we want, that they want. And understand, this is a spiritual work as much as it is a political work. This is all about bringing us back to Babel. I mentioned in yesterday's program that this is really a supernatural, a spiritual working. It's all about trying to fulfill one of the oldest lies in the book, ye shall be as gods.
Yes, exactly. And the transhumanism movement is part of this as well. They want us to believe that we can be better if they just come in and alter our DNA some way using CRISPR-Cas9 or some other method. We will be happier. In fact, there are claims now that there are certain genes that make you happy or not. Well, we can make sure you're always happy. That way you'll be really content when they give you your little beveled rimmed bowl full of gruel.
Yes. Please, sir, may I have some more?
Oh, my God.
Heavy. This is something.
Well, you get my brain just reeling.
Yes.
Because you guys bring up subjects that other people don't bring up.
That's right.
But let's go on. A radical transformation of the world economy would need the cooperation of major multinational corporations. What is their reaction to this?
Well, interestingly enough, you would think that the global elites in terms of banking, finance, the energy companies, the technology sector, consumer products, you would think that they would be really reluctant to sign on to something that would fundamentally transform the global economy. I mean, this is the economy and the economic system that made them fantastically wealthy. So why would they want to change the status quo? But in fact, they are signing on to this. And in fact, this is one of those things that you just have to file under the category of you can't make this stuff up. Because this past summer, and then again in December, they finalized this and issued a press statement. There is a group of global economic leaders that oversee $10 trillion in assets. $10 trillion. Now, bear in mind, that's about half of the annual gross domestic product of the United States, okay? $10 trillion in assets, some 200 million employees working in almost every country, almost every continent on planet Earth, have signed and agreed to become part of a new group called the Council for Inclusive Capitalism. The Council for Inclusive Capitalism. But get this, the group will meet. It is led by a core group of global leaders who literally call themselves guardians for inclusive capitalism, but they are under the moral guidance of Pope Francis. It's like, okay, wait a minute now. We've got the Vatican and the Jesuits in here. Did we mention that one of the global leaders as part of this group is a Rothschild? Okay, so you get the Rothschild banking family as part of this. It's, you feel like you almost need a 4 foot by 8 foot whiteboard with charts and lines and, trying to piece all of this together. This includes chief executive officers from companies like MasterCard, the big French company Allianz SE, the CEO of Salesforce, the big the company that deals with
HR and all that.
contact management, DuPont, the International Trade Union Confederation, Mark Carney, who's the former governor of the Bank of England.
These associations have been quietly forming behind the scenes, and we don't hear much about it in the mainstream media, but they are ready. It's like in the Bible, we hear that there are 10 kings that are waiting for their kingdoms. There are oligarchs, big corporations, organizations like this that have been quietly forming, and when the moment comes to transform the order out of chaos, they will be ready to step up and take their kingdom.
Yeah. So bottom line here is I could go through all these lists, and I won't because it's kind of boring, but you've got energy companies, you've got technology companies, you've got financial companies, MasterCard, Visa, Bank of America, you've got Merck, one of the big pharmaceutical companies. So basically, and then you've got a Rockefeller and a Rothschild in there for the conspiracy theorists. Under the headship and the moral guidance of the Jesuit Pope, it's enough to make your head explode if you're into that sort of thing. But God saw all of this coming. Psalm 2. He's on his throne laughing with derision.
Why do the nations rage and imagine a vain thing? That's how it begins. And his reaction is, I'm going to take you down.
My anointed one will be on the throne in his holy mountain, Zion.
What is the fourth industrial revolution? How is it part of the Great Reset?
Well, this actually gets back to what Sharon had brought up just a few minutes ago, and the idea of transhumanism. The fourth industrial revolution, as defined by Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum. And I'm going to read now right from their website. The first industrial revolution used water and steam power to mechanize production. The second used electric power to create mass production. The third used electronics and information technology to automate production. Now, a fourth industrial revolution is building on the third, the digital revolution that has been occurring since the middle of the last century. Here's the takeaway. It is characterized by a fusion of technologies that is blurring the line between the physical, digital, and biological spheres. In other words, the merging of technology and biology, making us transhuman.
Yes, moving towards that singularity moment when artificial intelligence outpaces mankind's ability to control it.
This idea that we would somehow all be connected, interconnected through technology, implanted in inside our heads or wherever, sounds to some of the really technological. I mean, we're early adopters of technology. We've got about 15 internet connected devices right here on the desk and around us. But being connected to the internet all the time up here is not as great an idea as some of these technocrats would like us to believe.
Oh, Elon Musk would love to, connect.
He would, but he also said that creating an artificial intelligence, an autonomous artificial intelligence, is literally, using his words now, summoning the demon. If you're connected to the internet all the time up here, anything that's connected to the internet not only receives information, it sends information, which is part of the goal of the technocrats. They want to be able to track our every movement, all of our energy use, all of our transactions, what we buy, what we sell, what we read, so they can manage us, control us,
you can
corral
buy
us.
and sell? Oh, boy, that sounds biblical.
It does, doesn't it? But it also means if you're connected and you can receive information, anything connected to the internet can be hacked. So frankly, I don't want my brain connected so that it can be hacked, have ideas implanted into it. But that is what they're talking about with this fourth industrial revolution, the fusion of technologies that's blurring the lines between the physical, digital, and biological.
But think about this. If you have a chip in your brain, which is one of the big goals, if you have a chip in your brain that essentially maintains your memory, which is one of the military goals. They want to make sure that a soldier can recall everything that happened to him, and also, we're told, to help with PTSD. So if you have a chip in your brain that helps you with memory, you can essentially be rewritten at will. We can be made to believe that what we thought was our past is no longer our past. Now, this is true. Can you imagine a world where suddenly everyone is told, no, the president isn't Biden, the president is someone else, and we all believe it?
Now this sounds really, really frightening and really science fiction. And to be honest, there are some experts in the field of cognition, the power of thinking, who say that it is more science fiction than reality. The human brain is a lot more complicated than these people who are promoting these ideas think. And being able to tie the human brain into a computer and connect it to the internet directly may be a fantasy. It may not be possible to do what they say. But the point to remember is this: the people, some very wealthy and very powerful people behind the Great Reset, believe it can be done.
Yes.
And they are acting as though it can be done, and they are pushing us in this direction and offering this out as hope of salvation.
Exactly.
Ye shall be as gods. And there are people who are buying into it because they don't understand the supernatural reality in which we live.
Years ago, I wrote a book, a novel, called The Armageddon Strain. And it was about a chip that was given to you that not only allowed access from the outside by the controllers, but the selling of it was we lined up to take the chip because it would cure you of any disease. There was a pandemic in the fictional world going around at the time that was based on H5N1 and an Ebola component. Nobody wanted that disease, so everybody lined up to get the chip because that would keep you protected, but it also would protect you from any new disease that came along. However, the chip had a secret. You could be killed at will if they decided you were dangerous.
The fourth industrial revolution, honestly, I have never heard about it before. I'm sure if I thought about it, I would guess the fourth revolution would be what it is.
Yeah,
But online, Mondo looks up everything as we go along, and the Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution founding partners, there's a list of all of them online. So if anybody wants to read about that, this is not some pipe dream. This is reality. The Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution founding partners, and it names them. It names the people. I better not name them, but I don't know. But if you want to see who they are, they're the people you know. And it, from Netflix to Facebook and all the big corporation, Hitachi, and there's dozens and dozens, perhaps hundreds, but this is reality, and this information society. This is in the New Testament. This is in the Revelation. This is where we are today, people. And it's scary. It's scary.
Yeah.
When you figure they stopped the voice of Donald Trump, the most effective president probably in history. He did more in one election period than anybody in history. And yet they shut down his voice.
Right. That's right.
How could that happen in the United States of America? It's frightening. Derek and Sharon, you don't seem to be frightened about anything. I just think it's because you believe in God.
Well, that's the reason. We are not given a spirit of fear. And again, Psalm 2 is so
Doesn't this frighten you at all?
No, not at all. I can't wait to see what God does. I cannot wait to see what our Lord and Savior, what our shepherd is going to do when these wolves start to attack.
What role does China play in this great reset? Let's get on with more questions. I could
Boy,
stop
that's
here
a good
forever.
one. Well, China is a major player in the World Economic Forum. In fact, Singapore is going to be where they're, so down in Asia, close to.
Yeah, they moved their annual meeting from Davos in Switzerland to Singapore, which is very close to China. And yeah, China's rise to economic power really began back in about 1972, where
Nixon opened it up.
And then the following year, Chairman Mao allowed an economist who had been in jail for having, wrong ideas, to attend the World Economic Forum, which at the time was still relatively new. And over the years, China has become a more and more active player in the annual meetings. And I've had a lot of side meetings with a lot of global bankers and industrialists and so forth who attend the World Economic Forum's annual meeting in Davos. So as things have developed, and especially since the 90s here in the United States, as we have allowed China to gut our industrial capacity, our manufacturing capacity, as the oligarchs who own those companies were willing to pocket some extra money by offshoring the manufacturing to China, which was willing to do it cheaper, and willing to use rather predatory tactics to steal technology. Yes. I mean, this is something that wasn't addressed by any American president up until President Trump, who basically called a spade and said, look, they are stealing our intellectual property, they are stealing our technology, and they are manufacturing it over there. There is a program that we've talked about on our Sci Friday program, which is available on the PTL Voice of the Prophets Network, called the 1,000 Talents Plan, where the Chinese government was paying researchers, Chinese citizens who were working in Western universities, Canada, United States, United Kingdom, paying them to take research that they were doing with American, Canadian, UK tax dollars and send it back to Beijing.
And in some case, the U.S. and Canadian professors were also receiving money from China to allow this to happen.
Right, and some of these professors actually were American citizens. There was a very high-profile case about a year ago where the chairman of the chemistry department at Harvard was arrested for not disclosing his financial arrangements with the Chinese government to send this technology back. So China has been taking advantage of these ties that it's built through the World Economic Forum to really hamstring the economies of the West. China and the Chinese government, the Chinese mindset is very different than it is for us here in the West. My dad used to use this kind of analogy. He said, we Americans tend to view management of a company as like a hockey game. And you got these 20-minute periods, and when you get toward the end of the third period, which he equated to be like the end of the fiscal year, if you're not winning, you pull everybody, you pull the goalie, you get 6 attackers on the ice, and everything goes to try to score that goal at the end of the period, not thinking about the long-term plan, what happens in the next game. The Chinese, on the other hand, he said, it's like a ballet. He said there are times where it's slow, times when it's fast, times where there's the orchestra swells, and other times when it's quiet, but they always know what the end is going to be, and they're always working towards that end. So he said a very fundamental difference in not just the business orientation, but the political orientation. The Chinese are thinking long-term, they're thinking strategically, and their goal aligns for now with the World Economic Forum. The World Economic Forum, to achieve the Great Reset, needs to essentially destroy the middle class, especially in the United States, but in the Western world in general. China will rise to become the world's #1 power when that happens. Now, Mr. Schwab and his allies there at the World Economic Forum probably think the Chinese are all on board with the Great Reset. I think they'll find out that long-term, China is simply using the Great Reset as a stepping stone to achieve what it has always wanted, which is global dominance. China is still very sensitive about what they call the century of shame. This is a period from about 1830 to about 1947, where China suffered greatly under influence and intrusion from Western governments. The Europeans, the Americans, we came in there, we messed them up. There were the Opium Wars, the Boxer Rebellion, and other things that World War I, World War II, they suffered greatly. And now they want payback. Most Americans today, was it World War II? That was forever ago. What are you guys still mad about? But that's just the way, that's fundamentally different worldview. And so the Chinese right now, helping the World Economic Forum make the Great Reset a reality, but I think they've got a long-term plan in mind that does not include the World Economic Forum.
That's true. Amen.
I want to ask you again, and you answered it yesterday. But I think people watching this show are getting more an idea there is a reset coming. We're in the beginning of a reset. What part does COVID-19 play in this great reset, do you think?
It's a huge role. In fact, Klaus Schwab wrote a book called COVID-19 and the Great Reset. There are two functioning prongs to this fork of turning over the world, threshing us. One is climate change, which I'll talk about more in a second, but the other one is pandemics. And when the pandemic of 2020 hit last year, it became the vehicle for moving us into the great reset that the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab have planned. China, of course, is a major part of that. Joe Biden is a very big player in all of this. Prince Charles of Great Britain is a huge believer in the Great Reset. He had a long film that was playing. You can see it on the World Economic Forum's website. But Prince Charles just announced something he is calling the Terra Carta. In other words, it is a new sort of legal structure that will guide the Great Reset. And Terra is not just a reference to the earth upon which we live. It is a reference to a goddess. It is another name for Gaia. It is essentially saying, we are going to have a new contract with you, Mother Earth. Prince Charles is very, very enthusiastic about this. And there are a lot of major corporations that have signed on and are planning to sign this Terra Carta, which is part of the Great Reset. In other words, climate change, the Terra Carta, and pandemics. Everybody is going to be controlled by making sure we never get sick again and that we take care of Mother Earth.
Why do you think Biden is so upset with COVID-19? Did this just happen to fall into place for their plan?
Boy, isn't it convenient that it happened?
Well, it did, and this has really given political leaders all over the world the opportunity to do what they have long desired, which is extend their authority without legislative approval. To just, issue, and we see this here in the United States with the governors of a number of different states who have really gotten draconian in some of their measures. We kind of joked about wearing a mask inside your home, but in the state of California, Los Angeles County recently issued that guideline. I mean, if you are living in your home with anyone, and even if no one is sick, they want you to wear your mask all the time.
At home.
And this is even after the publication of peer-reviewed research showing that non-pharmaceutical interventions like mask mandates don't do anything to slow the spread of the disease. We've got a year's worth of data now, and they can look at how this has been, how this is different areas that have had different procedures in place, different regulations in place have affected the spread. There's no difference. Mask mandates, no mask, it doesn't make a difference. It doesn't make a difference. And yet, it's being exploited in that regard. And sadly, it's almost become like a political dividing point. People have been abused in public for not wearing a mask or for wearing a mask. It's sad. It's another way of dividing us.
Exactly.
Which is part of the plan. I mean, if they keep us at each other's throats, we're not looking at them and what they're doing.
In our book, Giants, Gods, and Dragons, and also in Veneration, we talk about the spirits that are always behind this. We see what happens in the material world, but the fact is that this is being driven by spirits who are in charge of the various nations. When Jesus told us that nation would rise up against nation, what he was actually saying was that tribes will battle with tribes. Who's in charge of the tribes? The spirits, the angels that God sent down after the flood, and they decided to rebel. So we are all under the guidance and at the mercy of fallen angels. The only way you get out of that is if you have Jesus Christ as your leader. That is being covered by his blood, accepting him as your Savior, and recognizing that he is your king.
Yeah. And the word in Matthew 24 translated nation is the Greek word ethnos, which is the root behind the word ethnic. So when Sharon says tribes, what she's really meaning are these divisions within our society, where we've got people of one skin color angry at people of another skin color because of what they perceive as, rightly or otherwise, past injustices. And this is also part of the World Economic Forum's plan. You'll find a lot of articles on their website about social justice. And it's less about righting past wrongs as it is about keeping people angry at one another, keeping nation angry at nation, ethnos against ethnos, because if people are divided, we are more easily controlled.
Yes.
How is the Great Reset typical of the occult doctrine, order out of chaos?
Oh, we talked about that yesterday just a little bit. It's hidden within the word reset itself. There are two gods that are hidden within that name. Re, which is the sun god, the creator god of the Egyptians, and Set, who is the one who tore everything down, the god of chaos. So we've got Re and Set hidden within reset. So we wrote a chapter, I wrote a chapter, you wrote a chapter or two for The Messenger, which is a new book from Tom Horn. And he believes that the arrival of the asteroid Apophis is really a message from the Lord that is telling us we are entering the last days, the very last years before Christ's return. And in order to have that happen, Apophis, which is the Egyptian god of the dead, imagine that.
Primordial chaos.
Yes, the chaos dragon.
The chaos dragon.
In fact, Tom, when he talks about that vision that the Lord gave him, he said when he first saw it coming at the earth, that it was horned. It was like a serpent with horns. He described it as a dragon. So hidden within Re and Set, the reset, the great reset, we see a reference to the Egyptian gods. And I see that through the Lord as saying, because Jesus said, it's going to be like it was in the days of Egypt, just as well as in the days of Sodom and in the days of Noah, and Lot. And I believe Tom has told us that those Egyptian plagues against the gods, that we're seeing God once again. He is going to chastise the gods of the world, and that is going to take us in the final battle that we call Armageddon.
That's why these books are so important.
Yeah.
Everybody needs to get these books because they explain so you put it in language that we understand and everyday language, and what the Lord is saying in giants, gods, and dragons, exposing the fallen realm and the plot to ignite the final war of the ages, and also veneration, unveiling the ancient realms of demonic kings and Satan's battle plan for Armageddon. It's of the utmost importance that you educate yourself. And here we have the tools. We're supplying them to you where you receive both the books for $30 donation to the ministry. And that includes shipping and handling.
God's judgment's coming, as well as God's people are going to be in revival. Amen. There's going to be a great move of God. I believe that with all my heart. God's judgment's coming, as well as God's people are going to be in revival. Amen. There's going to be a great move of God. I believe that with all my heart.
What are some of the examples, guys, of intentional chaos?
Just look at the news from the last 6 months.
Yeah. This past year, we saw chaos on the streets of the United States, all over the world. But it spread so quickly that it's really hard to believe that this was just spontaneous reaction to the death of George Floyd on May 30th of 2020 in Minneapolis, because within just a matter of days, there were protests in over 500 cities here in the United States. Ultimately, by the end of the year, more than 2,000 cities had seen protests. We've got protests in 60 countries across the globe, all in response to this one death in Minneapolis. That just doesn't make any sense. This is a supernatural, a spiritual movement that is trying to take advantage of, number one, the political situation, and trying to frame it as a response to what they accused the president of, and what they accused the United States of, being built on systemic racism, but also then trying to capitalize on the destruction of the world economy, because of the pandemic, which we now know with a year of information behind us, was a gross overreaction because the infection fatality rate for this is far too low to justify what we've done economically in essentially running the economy into a cliff, taking on an incredible record amount of new debt that we will never be able to pay down, not just here in the United States, but all around the world. It's appears to be, again, an attempt to destroy the existing systems so that we can, create chaos,
Yes.
and then build a new order, a new world order, build back better.
Yes,
the
and
Great Reset.
one of the biggest complaints of the last year is people saying, I didn't get my money yet. The government giving us our little bevel-rimmed bowl of money.
Yeah.
I didn't get my money yet.
Can you imagine
So
our
we're
ancestors?
all living in an expectation of getting the money.
Yeah. I mean, my grandfather grandfathers survived the great influenza of 1918, 1919. They and their parents did not stand around on the farm in North Dakota or the farm in Indiana saying, hey, where's my government check? This is something new. We've been conditioned now to expect a central authority. And what's happening now is they're trying to get us to accept the destruction of national boundaries and a national authority for an international authority. And we're seeing some jockeying for position here on this global stage. You got the World Economic Forum that appears to want to take over as a new United Nations.
Yes, that's exactly what they want to be.
Pope Francis trying to angle for a role for the Vatican in there as the head of this Council for Inclusive Capitalism. And then, of course, the
soon-to-be
Chinese.
King Charles, he will be
Yes.
crowned soon, I believe, in the next 5 years. So he will control in many ways. London has been a major player throughout history. For the last 1,000 years, London has essentially ruled the world. We think that our president is the main player, but no, it's actually London, because it's the United States and London working together. I'm not so sure that you could say that we ever really completely broke from Great Britain.
Derek, how will the globalists push the Great Reset when the pandemic fades away?
Well, they've got another crisis ready and waiting in the background, and that, of course, is climate change.
Yes, they do.
This is something that they've been trying to sell us on for some time now, and there are too many of us who are just really skeptical about climate change to have bought into a fundamental restructuring of the global economy. No, I think feudalism to save the planet, I don't think that sounds like a good trade-off. But once they are planning this, and again, this is in the World Economic Forum's website. Their two main crises, as Sharon has said, are the pandemic and then the global, the global climate.
Save the world.
Yeah.
Worship Gaia.
We have to save the world. And once the pandemic begins to fade, they will switch back to pushing the green agenda. And that's why the green agenda, in fact, their goals under the Great Reset look a lot like the Green New Deal that's been proposed by Senator Markey of Massachusetts and Representative Ocasio-Cortez of New York. It's all about essentially making Earth, another deity.
Yes,
and
exactly.
worshiping Earth.
Yeah, I think that's really what's going on here. And another way that the big corporations and the banks are going to control us is through a digital currency. Derek mentioned on the last program that we're going to all be given a digital wallet, and that will be, they'll keep track of that through an app on your phone. They will also have an app on your phone that says whether or not you have been vaccinated. So you will have a passport that allows you to travel, and it may even allow you to travel not just on a plane, but from state to state into your school system. Eventually, because we can all lose our phones, or they can be stolen, eventually they'll have to tag us in some other way. Wonder if it'll be either a hand or on the forehead.
I want to ask you a question. When do we run out of money? When does printing money not work anymore?
Well, when it becomes digital money, then it's just imaginary money.
And I think that's one of the reasons they're moving toward it, because if it's a digital currency and everybody has a digital wallet, whether you have a bank or not. In fact, the Federal Reserve Bank here in the United States has already proposed this plan as a way to get COVID-19 relief to people who are not banked.
Faster. It's called the Banking for All Act.
Right.
And so with that, well, I think that'll pass quickly.
But the idea is that in order to do this, they will create a new digital currency that will bypass the Federal Reserve Bank, bypass Congress essentially.
Yes.
Under the Constitution, the Congress has the sole power to create money, to create currency. They have to authorize it through the Treasury, and then the Treasury says, okay, Federal Reserve, here's more money that you all can issue out there. If the Fed starts creating digital currency and going directly to people, they're cutting Congress out of the loop.
They are, because right now the Federal Reserve, actually what they do is they give us permission to print money.
Right. And so this is a way of doing that. But as we've mentioned here, this digital currency, if you're using a digital currency, it has to be tracked, which means every transaction has to be tracked. When you're using physical money, you can go and buy things at garage sales or flea markets. You're kind of off the grid in that respect. This would prevent that. If they eliminate physical cash for digital money, every transaction is tracked. This is the technocrat's dream. Technocracy is based on this idea that everything you do is tracked, measured, quantified, and that way they can use all of this data to properly manage society, because these technocrats, these experts, scientists, engineers, they're the only ones who are smart enough to tell us how we're supposed to live.
And because there will be so much data and it's very difficult to track everyone when you're a very limited human being, they'll be using algorithms and artificial intelligence to do that.
Right, right. So this is the plan, basically, and this is why they're trying to roll out 5G and then 6G.
Well,
digital,
7G is actually.
and they're even starting on
proposed.
7G. Yes, these technologies to stream data faster and faster, because they need that those broadband, those pipes to handle lots and lots of data, to track everything that we do, not just surfing on the internet, but Mr. Gilbert, we've noticed you open your refrigerator today. You've already exceeded your cholesterol count for today.
Yeah.
Put back the ice cream, or that's the kind of thing that they're looking to do.
You two are dangerous. Did you know that?
Wow. This is something.
We've been told that.
You are. You're on the most dangerous list in America, probably. But
Well, this information is vital.
I
that we
still-
know this.
if we print too much money, the value of the dollar goes down, and other countries don't want the dollars. Can we just have a digital money that there's no bottom to it, that you just keep printing money without an end coming?
The European Union is all in favor of getting away from anything that's pegged to the dollar. They want to get out of it. But I think that eventually you're going to have all of these denominations go away, and it will be one universal worldwide denomination. They'll call it Quatlus or whatever. But you will spend those digital coins through your wallet, through an app on your phone. It's done in China right now. They have something called WeChat. No.
I think it's WeChat.
WeChat. It's the app on their phone that allows them to do everything. They walk into a restaurant, the app automatically orders what they want, automatically pays, does everything but eat it for them. But the Chinese government controls whether or not you are allowed to go into that restaurant, whether or not you can spend and get on a plane, whether or not you can travel legally, because they want to make sure that you behave correctly as a citizen. If you like something that is contrary to the government line, if you click like on a social media platform, then your rating score goes down. Literally, we are moving to a future where an algorithm will determine on our likes and dislikes, on our behavior, whether or not we can buy or sell.
Yeah, but in the short term, and we talked about cancel culture in the previous program, there is a move among liberals, and this is really ironic because liberals, you would think, at least the traditional definition of liberal is one who's in favor of personal liberty and freedom of speech, freedom to associate, freedom of religion. But there is a growing cry among very prominent liberals, Katie Couric, recently made this claim that conservatives and Christians who supported President Trump especially need to be deprogrammed. There was an op-ed writer for the Washington Post who recently made the claim as well on MSNBC. But a best-selling author, and I'm not going to name his name here because I really don't want to drive any traffic to his website, but he's a New York Times best-selling author with like 3 #1 bestsellers, and he's a Critics' Choice Best Book of the Year 3 times. He produced a video around the time of the inauguration, released it the day before the inauguration, calling for #Trump's New Army. Essentially, what he's saying is that as of January 20th, Donald Trump is no longer in control of the armed forces of the United States, but he's now the commander-in-chief of a new army. And then this video, very well produced, shows the tens of thousands of people gathered on the National Mall to support President Trump on January 6th, the day of the riot at the Capitol.
It's like the Reichstag fire. We are the communists in the Hitler scenario.
Right.
And we are becoming the enemy.
But the setup here is that this gentleman is calling for people who support the liberal agenda, the Biden administration, and this idea of a globalist worldview where we all come together under one global government to become citizen detectives, to spy on their neighbors, because these Trump supporters, this army of domestic terrorists, and he uses that phrase, are hidden in plain sight. They can be working at the bank or the grocery store. They could be your child's teacher. They could be members of the police or the military. We need you to check on their activities, spy on them, and report to authorities. This is like the citizen informants to the Stasi in East Germany during the communist period in East Germany. This is openly calling for a totalitarian government. So until they get this social credit score system in place, using their allies in Silicon Valley to track all of us, they want our neighbors to watch our activities. Oh, this person tweeted support for a patriot group. They're probably one of them.
His little boy wore a MAGA hat in the yard yesterday.
Right. That's probably child abuse. This is the world into which we're moving. But you know, Pastor Lori, Mondo, this is Maricela, thank you. I only have so much memory space up here. We haven't figured out how to expand the memory up here yet. This is a lot like what the early church went through, not just in the 1st century, but even as late as the early 4th century, late 3rd, early 4th century, when the persecution under Diocletian took place, just before Constantine, the Emperor Constantine, came to power. Christians were subject to similar things, where they were stripped of property, they were fired from jobs, they were ejected from the military for their faith in Jesus Christ. So we should not expect any better than what they endured. We really, in America here for the last 250 years or so, since the early colonies were established 400 years ago, we have really been an anomaly in human history.
Amen.
The church in America has really had a blessed run. And what's going on right now may be God's way of saying, hey, time for kindergarten Christianity to end. You all need to put on your big boy pants and get busy about making disciples.
Yes. And remember what James tells us. When these trials come, what are we to do? We're to consider it all joy.
What should we as believers do when this reset takes place?
Keep your eyes on Jesus. He is our shepherd. And Psalm 23 is one of my favorite passages in the Bible. And it tells us that he is going to lead us in many, many places. And one of those places might be through the valley of the shadow of death. That's a scary place. But it says, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. That means that no matter what wolves come at us, no matter what the situation of a great reset brings to the body of Christ, he is there with his rod and his staff. He is the one who is going to correct that. He is the one who is going to defend us. He is our keeper. He is our blessed Savior. He is covering us with his blood. He, in Ephesians 6, tells us what our weapons are. Not just that we're following him, but we are clad and protected in the spiritual armor of God. For goodness sake, what is our shield made of? Faith. Have faith that God has a plan. And anytime you have an opportunity to pray with other believers, lock your shields of faith in position, because that makes us stronger.
Amen. Yes, that's
Amen.
excellent.
Our time's totally gone today.
my
I want you to be
goodness.
sure to order their 2 books. Now, they've got 3 books online. It's only on their picture there, but it's just the 2 books written by them.
Right.
And
Sharon and Derek.
the other book sitting there is going to come out later on, and
Yes.
that's
Yes.
Tom Horn's new book.
That's right. And in
But
this bundle, that's right.
These are their 2 new books.
Yes, there are 2 new books. In this bundle, you're going to receive one of the Giants, Gods, and Dragons books and one of the Veneration book. And that's for a love gift of $30. And that includes the shipping and handling as well with that offer.
That's right.
Okay, so everybody do it right now. Use your...
Yes. Yes, they
Check?
can make their check or do an electronic check as well by calling the 800 number at 1-888-988-1588 or going to the website, thejimbakershow.com.
Yes.
And we're talking today about Revelation.
Yes.
We really are.
We really are.
We
it's
are in
amazing. And these are the
Revelation,
teachings that you've done for us, Dad. You
that's
literally
right.
spent your time teaching and devouring the word. And that's what we want to offer to you today. This is the Revelation Revealed DVD series. It's 14 DVDs with 28 hours of teaching from the beginning of Revelation to the very end, and you're showing us what does the word of God say is to come so that we can be prepared. We know the end of the story. We know that's where we can put our trust. So we want you to order this series and get your churches involved in this teaching, your families, your friends. Do not be caught unaware.
Right.
This is a great time for the church. So
Amen.
you can order that for a $100 love gift to the ministry, and you're helping us to stay on the air, because more than ever we need the voice of the prophets. We
Amen.
need teachers like Derek and Sharon
Yes.
who are going to come and teach us what is coming, what lies ahead, what do we look forward to, how do we
right.
prepare for the days that we're living in. Amen.
And I'm hoping a lot of people will order
Good.
my teaching and they can study at home and then study with me.
Revelation
On
TV.
Revealed.
That's right.
It's
You know,
so good.
well, our time's gone today. We want to thank Derek and Sharon Gilbert
Thank you guys so
from
much.
Skywatch.
God bless you.